Oh, Sarah.
Yes.
Hi, come in.
Not a fundamental change. I mean, it was an experience for everybody, given a lot of time to think about what we were doing and time to think about what you can do on your own and what you need people for. But what it showed everyone, I think, was the importance of audiences in concerts, because without an audience, for me, the concert has no real sense. And so it comes back to one of the fundamentals of music, which is music is about communication, and being brilliant and wonderful in your own room alone hasn't got a lot of meaning, really. It's very clear. It became very clear to everybody that you play because you play to play for people and with people. Yeah. So that I think everyone realised the importance of the social aspect of music and the social importance of music during COVID. It hasn't changed my writing style, I don't think, fundamentally. Although it did produce two pieces, I mean, which I wouldn't have written otherwise. The Quartet for One was a complete product of COVID. And in fact, it was a piece that helped me with my writing, because I was supposed to be writing a string quartet at that time. And with the COVID came, suddenly all this time appeared, but it was very unreal time. It was not time that was moving past, it was time that was standing still. And so I actually found, like many other people, found it very hard to do something creative. And then Lawrence Power phoned me and said he wanted to do these pieces for the lockdown. Could I write something to do with the lockdown? And he said, I can record it in the Royal Festival Hall, which is one of the big concert hall in London. So I then suddenly had this idea of the Quartet for One, and it was a very strong idea, and so I had no problem at all writing it. It took me a week and it was done. And after that I was much more at ease writing in lockdown, so that was a big help to me in a way. Well, composing, I think very much about what effect a piece has. I mean, having played a lot in public, I understand a bit what it's like to be on stage and play to people. You get a feeling for what will work and what won't work. And I feel you should never leave your audience behind. The audience has to understand what's going on, because actually you need them, because the way they listen to it is the way you hear it, in a way. I mean, you only hear the music through the audience, and they only, in a way, it's a participative thing. From their point of view, they form a part of the piece from that point of view, so it's important. And so I always try and imagine, when I'm writing a piece, will it work in public, when the people are there. But I think the very important thing about music is the live part means that it's a living being, the music, and it's very clear. You can prove it by saying, once you've done one very good performance of a very good piece, it's not over, because the next day you have to play it again, and you have to start from zero. You don't start from zero, but you start. It's not a done thing. Once you've done that thing, you always need to recreate it as a live event, and it has to happen here and now. The fact that it happened last week, it was wonderful, is great, but it doesn't mean a lot when you're here today. So each time you get up on stage and you play, you're creating something. I think that's the essential thing to remember about music. It's not something that's fixed and stays forever. Yes and no, because a lot of my compositional is based on what I did with the string quartet I played in the Areti String Quartet, which is a really great contemporary music quartet, and we only did very sort of serious contemporary music, and which I like very much. Which I like very much, and there were some really cool sounds in there and amazing things, which a lot of people should hear, I thought. But we were usually playing to very specialised audiences because of the musical language, which is very advanced, which is fine. But there were sounds in there which I thought were too good to stay in that small world of contemporary music. And I realised that if people need to, what I'm saying about not leaving the audience behind, they have to have an entry point into the music. And that has to be part of the music which is familiar. And in a way, you never really learn anything new. You build on what you know already, in a way. So my idea, especially with the viola spaces, was to take away all the very confusing sides of contemporary music, which is the rhythm is very difficult. Often, not everyone, but it is. So to keep everything very simple, and to concentrate on the sound. So for me, I was writing sort of normal music, but I was introducing sounds from this very hardcore contemporary world. And it worked very well, because the sound is so interesting in itself. It doesn't matter it can work in any context. So by giving people something they recognise, a clear rhythm, a nice tuneful thing, they were then ready to receive the important part of the message for me, which was the sound. And it makes things sound new, which they're very familiar, but suddenly they sound completely new because the sound has changed. And yet people know how to accept them because they're used to those rhythms, those tunes. There's nothing new in the notes, but the sound is new. I think it comes down to do with imagination, just to imagine what is possible. I mean, you have to be very, especially viola d'amore, you have to be very creative to do something because there's not a lot already ready and there's no circuit of viola d'amore players going around giving concerts. Right? So you have to propose this idea. But at the same time, that can be an advantage because it forces you to be original. And it's an original idea to propose a viola d'amore concept. Viola d'amore, what is that? And curiosity plays an element in it. And the fact of having two sets of strings is always something to, And the viola is, less familiar than the violin and the cello, of course, and the piano. So it has this surprise element. But what we need is good core repertoire pieces which are approachable but have something interesting to say. And we bring out the qualities of the instrument itself, making the most of them. I think it's happening slowly, but it will take some time, I think. But I'm trying because I like to think what the viola can do that other instruments can't do, and then make a piece around that feature. Is often what I try and do to show this thing. One advantage we have is it's a very middle register, which is nice in a way because there's just enough bass to give the impression of a bass and just enough high part to give an impression of a high part, and the middle is very full. So it's in a way you can give the impression of doing lots of things on the viola. Yeah. And its biggest advantage of all is that it can mix with any other instrument. It's really good at fitting in with anything else, which is so nice for us. It's socially, you can play with anybody in a way. That's the nicest thing. Even and I think that tuba. We could, yes, even tuba, yeah. But I think that's when we can explore more. Invite other instruments in which seem very foreign to us, but the viola is very adaptable. It can usually find a way to play with any kind of instrument. Mm-hmm. So I think mixed groups are an interesting way to go about it. I think it's interesting for the player. I think it's interesting musically to learn the background, learn a piece like that, and learn a concerto, and Elgar's an interesting composer. For the audience, I think it has less sense. I've heard it. It works less well. It's just clear. I mean, why would it? Why would it work better? I mean, Elgar was a very clever composer. But I think it's why not do it in private? It's great. But you're not going to replace the cello in a cello concerto on the viola. It's clear. Because Elgar wouldn't have written that way if it had been a viola. He'd have written something else. Yeah. But it's fun to play. It's fun to hear. But it's not a serious rival for the cello version, let's face it.
That's amazing.
That's why I wrote my pocket concerto. I wanted to show because what the viola, if you look at it, there's a symphony orchestra there are 12 violas playing as loud as they can, and you usually can't hear them. So why would one viola in the front be heard? It's not a natural combination for me, a viola and a symphony orchestra. Trombone and symphony orchestra, piano, no problem. But viola, you have to write in it's possible, write in a very special way. But I thought, and it's nice for a viola player to have the experience of playing concertos, but it happens so rarely, that I thought it was nice if we could have a little concerto which was easy to put on. So there is no orchestra, it's just one cello. So all you need is a friend who plays cello. And then you have a full-scale viola concerto in 3 movements that you can get used to this form of the concerto, and yet, I thought it was a nice idea. I think there should be more little pieces like that give us a chance to show what we can do. And there's no balance problem, you just play with one cello. Then you can play, and then you can explore the interesting side of the viola, the small things which are not the ones that carry right to the back of the hall and rub out the rest of the orchestra. That's not what we're made to do. It's not our job, and it's not the interesting feature of the viola.
I'm still curious. So you're not planning to make any concerto for viola and orchestra?
A big scale one? No, not really. Not for them. I might do one with string orchestra. That I can do. Yeah. As a composer, I'm self-taught, so I just make things up as I go along. So I haven't got the technique of a big orchestral composer. I mean, I couldn't write a symphony or something for orchestra. It would take me, years and years. And a viola concerto with a full orchestra, as I say, for me, it's maybe another instrument. But for strings, I could do something. A string orchestra, I could do something. I'm toying with the idea of a viola d'amore concerto. It would have to be done very carefully because your viola d'amore is really mixed. But yes, I should do that one day. Yes, I will, no doubt. Yeah.
Also with piano sonata.
Piano interests me much less, actually.
Okay,
I'm not a fan of the piano. Yeah, I'm not a fan of the piano. I think, as you might have understood some of the things I say, we as string players, we suffer in some ways from the domination of the piano over the last few centuries, not just in music, but also in the way music is thought and taught and conceived, and the whole composition thing. When you think that with the general repertoire, concert repertoire from, for example, from Bach to Schoenberg, you can play it all on the piano. I mean, whatever piece is written for it can all be played with a piano transcription. And that tells you something about the way people think about music. Whereas in the 20th century, it's no longer the case. There are many pieces you just could not play on the piano. I mean, quarter tones, glissandos, all these kind of extra pianistic techniques. And we, I think, suffer from this idea that it's an instrument with, like it has, keys, and there's nothing between two notes. This is the right note and it's in tune or it's out of tune. This is the next note, it's in tune or out of tune. And in between it, there's nothing there. Don't even go there. Don't even think about it. I mean, come on. A string is a continuum where every part of the string makes a beautiful sound. And I think those kind of things we forget because we're taught this very academic, pianistic way. And the piano, for me, is, again, not a good partner for a viola. I mean, it's very big already before it plays, takes a lot of space. It's much too loud. The modern piano is much too loud for a viola, Steinway. Old piano is completely different. If you play a period piano, it's wonderful. It's like an equal partner. Physically, usually the viola player stands up with the piano pianist behind them, which is a stupid, I mean, for any kind of chamber music, how can you play with someone who's playing behind you? I usually stand on the other side. And just the general volume of the piano is much too loud for us. And the registers, we're right in the middle and the piano's got this high and lows. It's not a good partner. And you can if you're clever. Some pieces work. Shostakovich was clever, actually. That's very well written for the piano. Yeah, it really comes through. There's no problem at all. The Brahms sonatas, I mean, they're nice pieces, but they're not great on the viola. You have to be honest. It's better on the clarinet. And there's a balance problem about half the way through. Poor pianist has to, and it's a really hard part. It's not a satisfying solution for me, the piano. Harpsichord or anything like that is wonderful.
Do you have a musical signature like this?
No, I don't. No, but everyone I speak to tells me, "Oh, your music sounds so Irish." And I don't do it on purpose. Even the pieces which I'm not trying to be Irish, they say, "Oh, yeah, I can always tell it's amazing."
I thought actually parallel quints are also
yes, parallel fifths, yes. Yeah.
Quite often.
It does, yeah. I mean, I'm quite interested by medieval music. I like very much. I like old music. And those old styles, the parallel fifths, the fifths, fourths, and this the open intervals. Yeah, I like very much, and that's very the folky side of it as well. It's the same in folk music. I like very natural sounding music. But I have no real signature, and I never tried to do anything with my name. There's no X in music or a K. Yeah, no, I think it's important it's nice to have roots, nice to know where you come from, yeah. Actually, my roots are slightly mixed in between the Irish and the Scottish, because I was born in Ireland, but when I was 5 we moved to Scotland, so I grew up in Scotland. But when I arrived in Scotland at first, I felt very Irish, because I had an Irish accent, and I was different from the other kids, and after a few years it goes away, but that was fine. And then I began to feel very Scottish, because I was living in Scotland, speaking Scottish and everything like that. And then I moved to London, where I had this very Scottish accent, and people couldn't understand what I was saying, so I had to learn to speak English, and so that was a mix. But I have to say that since Brexit happened, I'm feeling more and more Irish, because the Irish are in Europe and the Scottish are not. The poor Scottish want to be in Europe, but the present government, the UK government, is a really terrible government, and they're doing everything wrong. And they're messing everything up, and they went through this really stupid idea, which is Brexit, which anyone can see is a madness. Which they were already regretting, and they will regret. And poor Scotland would like to be out of it, so I'd be all for Scotland and independence. But I have family in Scotland and Ireland, so I feel those are my roots, and when I go there I feel at home. But I'm very happy to live here. I like France very much. I feel like my family is French, and I'm very happy here. So, well, Valentina is French. Well, she's Argentinian French. And our 2 boys are of French nationality. I mean, they speak English, French, and Spanish, but she's Spanish speaking. She's from Argentina.
When did you move to Paris?
I came to join Pierre Boulez's group in 1983, a long time ago.
Oh!
Yeah. But then I went.
I was born.
Yeah, before you were born. And then I moved back to London in 1990 to join the Arditi Quartet. But I had enjoyed Paris so much, I came back in 2000, just before 2000 in the State, and been here ever since. So this feels like home. I don't feel French, but this is my home for the moment. Yeah.
And what do you think, like, inspiration in Paris is different from, for example, London? It's so different countries. And
it's very different, yes.
Do you feel more like free in France or Paris?
Yeah, but it's also your own situation. I think as a foreigner, you feel a bit freer, because then you know this, and you see more clearly what's going on in a country. And at the same time, you don't suffer quite so much from all the bad things. So you think, well, you can see it's wrong, but what can you do? And you've seen other countries where things are different, so you can make you have a sort of distance. Whereas if you only grown up in one country, you get very involved. And I think it's nice to be a foreigner, but it's also very nice to have roots. It's an ideal situation. Sure, it's nice to have both, I think. I must say, in my case, I don't play so much of the older pieces, which have this tradition, so I have a bit less this problem. Although I play new pieces many times, and then I have to find a new way of doing it. As I say, my inspiration, I mean, one side of it is the preparation for the concert, which is knowing the background of the composer, knowing the musical language, what else was being written at that time, is this piece special, is there a meaning, and all this kind of analysis is very important as well. And then each time as players, we were saying earlier, it's a different context and a different, acoustic, different audience. So that, you sort of listen through the ears of the audience, and it's like you're hearing the piece for the first time, and you think, well, how do I need to say it this time to make sense of this? So I don't get bored with pieces. Always, as I say, they have to be played. They only exist when they're being played. So once they're over, it's stopped. So playing it again is like a new time every time for me. That's how I keep the interest up. Well, I would say to anyone who's learning, if someone tells you there is only one way to do this, be suspicious, because usually it's not true. There might be a better way to do it, but there's never only just one way to do it. I personally like to do everything the wrong way as well, because just to see, if someone if you're always been doing it like that, you say, well, what if I did it this way? And for example, for something like bowing, if I have a phrase, which is one way, I would practice the bowing that's written, and then try the opposite, or try everything different. And then try and keep the good qualities, because sometimes you can see that, of course, this is the correct bowing. But if you do it the other way, there's this note that works really well. There's small qualities in the wrong way to do it, and then you try and import them into the right way of doing it. So when you get to this, you extra effort. You imagine in your head how it would feel and sound the other way up, because it works better. And that I find is really helpful. Not to be limited by the technical things, but to try everything, especially bowings, in every way possible, just to see, and then keep all the good bits and throw out the bad bits, and then do what you're supposed to do. For the right hand technique, the person who's swinging, I think it's important as well that there isn't just one way to do it. And when you're learning as a student, it's good to do what your teacher says always. But later on, when you become responsible for yourself, you have to look at your hand and look for natural lines. If you see something that doesn't look natural, it's not going to be good. And also the bow, there's many ways to hold the bow, and you can be very low or very high. You can be very spaced out or very together. And I think it depends on the repertoire. I change my bow hold. If I'm playing Brahms or something, a big concerto, I would space out my fingers and go down low in the bow to get this deep down on the sound. But if I'm playing a little fast little thing like this, I would do the opposite. I'd pick up my fingers, bring them high, bring them together, so the bow is free to move. So there's not one way to hold the bow. It depends what you're playing. But you have to understand what difference it makes to the bow where your hand is. Understand the difference between this, which gives you great contact, but stops you doing anything very fast and delicate with the bow. And this one, which gives you great articulation, but you don't have the strength anymore yet. And then, so adapt yourself for every piece.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
I learned so much.